But we all know what's going on. Our Democratic friends will agree to open up TSA, thank you, to open up FEMA, to open up the Coast Guard, to open up the CISA, thank you, thank you, thank you. But they haven't agreed, despite concessions on our side, to open up ICE. And they're not going to. It is not going to happen in your or my natural lifetime.
Senator John Kennedy just unloaded on Democrats in a fiery Senate floor speech, calling out what he says is the real reason behind the DHS shutdown. What followed wasn't just criticism, it was a full-scale takedown, as Kennedy took aim at what he calls the Karen wing of the Democratic Party driving the crisis. But this wasn't just another political speech. The Louisiana senator laid out what he described as a clear double standard, accusing Democrats of publicly calling for an end to the long-running DHS funding dispute, while quietly using the standoff to push something much deeper behind the scenes. Watch closely, because this is where the whole Democrat agenda is exposed in real time.
Now, every now and then, Mr. President, there is a dispute in Washington, D.C. that says something prophetic about the future of Western civilization. This is not it. This dispute is silly. Every single member of this body knows how important the Department of Homeland Security is. Most people recently think of Homeland Security as border security and ICE, interior security of our immigration laws. But Homeland Security is responsible for so much more. FEMA is part of Homeland Security. It's shut down. The Coast Guard is part of our Department of Homeland Security. It's shut down. The CISA, dealing with cybersecurity, is part of the Department of Homeland Security. It's shut down. The TSA is part of Homeland Security. They're working without pay. And not all of our colleagues in the TSA are working. This is the result. And it's going to get worse. But we all know what's going on. Our Democratic friends will agree to open up TSA, thank you, to open up FEMA, to open up the Coast Guard, to open up the CISA, thank you, thank you, thank you. But they haven't agreed, despite concessions on our side, to open up ICE. And they're not going to. It is not going to happen in your or my natural lifetime. I, on occasion, have referred to it as the Karen wing of the Democratic Party. The Karen wing wants to defund ICE, and they will accept nothing less. Now, this is the same wing of their party that also wanted to defund the police. How'd that work out for us? This is the same wing of their party that has a very novel way to reduce the crime rate in America. Just don't prosecute anyone. Then our crime rate goes to zero. Now, I don't mean to paint with too broad a brush, Mr. President. Not all of my Democratic friends agree with the moon the Karen wing of their party. They don't. Just not all Republicans are part of the factions in my party. But it is a fact that the Karen wing of the Democratic Party is in ascendancy, and it is firmly in control. And any Democrat, we all know this, that agrees to any kind of compromise with respect to ICE is going to be punished to the rest of their natural lives. They can't do it, and they're not going to. And I've been part of the discussions in our conference. I'm convinced that listening to the same thing over and over and over again is lowering my IQ. When we know that nothing is going to resolve this, because my Democratic friends politically can't agree to a compromise about ICE. So here's what I think we ought to do. I think that we should accept the Democrats' offer to open up TSA and to open up FEMA and to open up Coast Guard and to open up and fund CISA. And let's get that done. Let's shorten these lines. And then the day after we do that, Republicans need to file a reconciliation bill the same way we passed the One Big Beautiful bill. And on our own, we need to come up with a budget for ICE. It's the only way to solve this problem. Now, my side feels very strongly about the SAVE Act. We believe that only Americans, citizens of our country, should be able to vote. And we believe that you shouldn't be able to vote unless you can prove you are who you say you are. What we're fighting about is that President Biden, for whatever reason, admitted between I don't know how many, 8 million, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million people illegally in our country, into our country. He did. We all watched him do it. And we don't even know where these people are. We don't. Some of them were children. We don't know where all the children are. We don't. And I'm not saying all of those folks were bad people. I'm not saying that. A lot of them were economic migrants. They just want a better life, and so they want to come to America. They chose not to do it through legal immigration. If they would do it legally, we could consider admitting them. We admit 1 million people a year of our world's neighbors to become American citizens. But they came illegally because, frankly, President Biden said do it. And they did it. Not everybody was Cinderella who came in. Some people who came in were criminals. They were murderers. They were rapists. They were drug dealers. They were sex traffickers. We all know that. That's what our ICE right now is trying to do. It's trying to find these people who shouldn't be in any country. But here's my point. As a result, and we all saw it happen, and the American people saw it happen. They get it. American people may not read Aristotle every day. They're too busy earning a living. But they get it. And a whole bunch of Americans believe, whether it's true or not, and I'm not saying it is true. I'm not saying it isn't true, because I think some of my Democratic colleagues believe this. But many Americans, millions of Americans, have concluded that this was all by design. That these 8, 10, 15, 20 million people who were admitted illegally into America is a way to try to bolster the Democratic Party. So these folks will be beholden to the Democratic Party, and try to vote and or once they become citizens, if they become citizens, vote for Democrats. Now, again,
at the heart of this standoff is a funding crisis involving the United States Department of Homeland Security, an agency responsible for everything from border enforcement to disaster response. But this isn't just about budgets, it's about power, policy, and the future of immigration enforcement in America. And according to Senator Kennedy, it's also about politics in its rawest form. The shutdown has already triggered serious consequences. Growing lines at the airports, TSA workers are going unpaid, disaster response systems like FEMA are affected, cybersecurity operations are under pressure. Yet despite all this, lawmakers remain locked in a bitter deadlock. Why? Because the real fight isn't over TSA or FEMA, it's over ICE. Republicans argue that you cannot partially fund national security. From their perspective, leaving out immigration enforcement, especially ICE, weakens the entire system. But Democrats, Kennedy claims, are willing to fund everything except ICE. And this is where Kennedy's tone shifts from critical to explosive. He points directly at what he calls a powerful faction within the Democratic Party, a group he labels the Karen Wing. According to him, this faction isn't just pushing policy, it's driving the entire strategy behind the shutdown, a strategy, he argues, rooted in a long-standing goal, reducing or even eliminating the role of ICE in American law enforcement. But Kennedy doesn't stop there. He takes it a step further into deeply controversial territory. He suggests that the surge of millions of illegal immigrants entering the United States in recent years may not just be a policy failure, but part of a broader political calculation. According to Kennedy, this influx is a deliberate plan by the left wing to reshape the electorate, that these new arrivals, once legalized or integrated into the system, could become a reliable voting base for the Democrats and ultimately strengthen the Democratic Party during future elections. It's a claim that fuels one of the most divisive debates in modern American politics. And Kennedy makes it clear this perception alone is already having consequences, because when voters begin to believe that immigration policy is tied to electoral advantage, trust in the system starts to erode. But beyond the political implications, Kennedy brings the focus back to security. He acknowledges that many migrants come seeking a better life, but he also warns that among the millions are individuals involved in serious crimes, including drug trafficking, assault, and human trafficking. And in his view, that's exactly why agencies like ICE are critical. They're not just enforcing immigration laws, they're identifying and removing potential threats. So when Democrats resist fully funding ICE, Kennedy argues, they're not just making a policy choice, they're creating vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Democrats and their allies argue that aggressive immigration enforcement can lead to civil rights concerns and humanitarian consequences, especially for families and children. So what you're seeing unfold is not just a funding dispute, it's a full-scale ideological clash. Security versus compassion, enforcement versus reform, control versus integration. And right in the middle of it all is a shutdown that's impacting real persons across the country. Now, with negotiations going nowhere, Kennedy proposes a dramatic shift. He suggests reopening the rest of Homeland Security immediately, get TSA, FEMA, and other agencies back online, then bypass the gridlock entirely, use a separate legislative process to fund ICE and border enforcement, even without Democratic support. It's a hard-line approach, but Kennedy argues it may be the only way to break what he sees as a politically driven stalemate, because in his words, this isn't just disagreement, it's a deadlock rooted in ideology and reinforced by political survival. And until that changes, this fight isn't ending anytime soon. So here's the bigger question. Is this shutdown really about policy differences, or is it about political strategy and long-term power? Do you agree with Senator Kennedy's stance, or do you think this goes too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep dives into the moments shaping today's political battles, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next.